X-Men First Class is one of the best installments in the X-Men franchise. It just does so much right, including adapting the themes of the X-Men mythos, like identity, purpose, and ideology. A character that really stands out in this movie is Michael Fassbender's Eric Lehnsherr slash Magneto. In this video, I will be reviewing the character of Eric Lehnsherr slash Magneto in 2011's X-Men First Class. The character of Magneto was created, along with the other original X-Men, in 1963 by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, both Jewish New Yorkers. Kirby is also the co-creator of Timely Comics' Captain America. He himself was a World War II veteran, serving in Europe mainly as a scout. There are themes of fascism and dictatorship in his stories, influenced by his real-world experience. The core themes of the character of Magneto have been present since his creation. Renowned X-Men writer Chris Claremont is the one who would give Magneto more depth and nuance as a character. He and Dave Cockrum were the ones to set Magneto's origin in the Holocaust back in 1981. Claremont took inspiration from his own Jewish experiences and knowledge to influence the character. He sought out to give Magneto an arc from a villain to more of a heroic leader, similar to his old friend Charles Xavier. Their origin gave the character credibility as it established the reason behind his actions and philosophy. The movies do a pretty good job at retaining this aspect of the character. It helps cement the real-world representations that are found in the X-Men mythos. Majority of Eric's character and story comes from the unmade X-Men Origins Magneto movie. Yeah, they plan to have an entire series of those. It's a bit obvious because of how much attention the story gives Eric's journey. The movie opens up with Eric's origin. He's separated from his mother at one of the death camps. The trauma of being torn away from his mother is what triggers his mutation. He's alone and scared, so the mutation is his way of adapting to the new environment to survive. His manifestation of his mutation catches the attention of Smith, later to be revealed as Shawn, the movie's main antagonist. Smith is a Nazi scientist who's interested in genetic mutation and evolution. It kind of mirrors the Nazi belief that one race is above all. Schmidt had been putting Eric through harsh tests to better understand his abilities. It's an abusive relationship. Schmidt has unchecked control over Eric, possibly a type of Stockholm Syndrome. Eric doesn't feel like he's able to stand up against his abuser because of how Schmidt has manipulated the young man. This comes back up later in Eric's arc. Eric is unable to call upon his powers on command, so Schmidt murders his mother in front of him as punishment. Eric begins to let himself get taken over by his anger. He's now all alone in such a dark and scary world. This sets up Eric's motivation for the rest of the film. Eric is now an adult in 1962. He's on the path of vengeance. I love how it's kind of played like a western. He's an anti-hero. He's doing bad things, but only to bad people. Eric goes undercover to a Swiss bank to deposit some stolen Nazi gold. I appreciate that they don't go full-on villain immediately with Eric. He kind of tortures the bank manager for information about Smith, since he's worked with Nazis and their finances before. But he doesn't kill him, perhaps because he's only guilty through association, so his punishment isn't as severe. It shows that Eric has some restraint. The bank manager tells him that Smith was last seen in Argentina. The bar scene is one of my favorite scenes in the entire franchise, and possibly my favorite Magneto scene. He's not overpowered in this scene, he's not bending the magnetic fields of the earth or lifting a Golden Gate Bridge. It's subtle and it's perfect. Eric is seeing the kind of comfortable life that these killers have accomplished. While so many of their victims are in unmarked graves, they kinda have the Nazis present themselves as just good, honest men. They were pig farmers and tailors. But Eric reminds them of who they are, monsters who took everything from his people. Eric reminds his victims about who he is and who he represents. He's carrying the memories and responsibility of his people. The music just adds so much to the scene as well. It's what really makes it feel like a Western. Henry Jackman was the composer. It kind of reminds me of Ennio Morricone's Man with a Harmonica theme from Once Upon a Time in the West. It's just so eerie and you're just sitting in anticipation with all this tension in the air. This shows the kind of brutality that Eric will go to and possibly has gone through. He can cross that line, and he will. Eric does some big brain investigating and finds out that Smith is in Miami. Eric does finally find Smith in Miami, now going by Shaw. Eric attempts to finally kill the man who took everything from him, his mother, his innocence, his identity, but he fails. Shaw has amassed a small following of mutants. Shaw's associate Emma Frost attacks the mind of Eric. We see more of the kinds of torture that Shaw subjugated Eric to. This sets up Eric's weakness to be more of a emotional and mental block caused by the years of trauma. It's his inability to control his emotions that causes him to not fully be able to control his powers. When he fails to capture the man he spent his whole life searching for, he's just assumed by his anger yet again. Eric is consumed by his quest for vengeance. It nearly gets him killed, as he's unwilling to let go, not being able to recognize that he isn't strong enough yet. Charles Xavier is the one who saves him. Charles has Eric realize that he is no longer alone, both in terms of being a mutant and his journey for justice. This is the beginning of Eric's kind of secondary arc. I appreciate that they never have Charles force Eric to do anything in this movie. They have that mutual respect for one another. Eric, Charles, and the US government have a common enemy in Shaw. Though Eric is mature enough to recognize that this partnership cannot last. Once Shaw is defeated, the government will just turn on all mutants. Charles convinces him to stay. Eric needs friends. He can't beat Shaw and his brotherhood alone. Eric does do some assisting in Charles' arc as well. Eric demands that Charles and he be the only people to handle the mutant affairs. No involvement from the government. Charles agrees. Both of them are starting to see that there's a real issue present and they need to be more proactive in their stance. They can make changes from within, but they need to do it together. In the beginning of the movie, they had Eric and Charles' origin intercut between one another. Eric spent his formative years as a prisoner in a death camp and as a victim to a sadistic man. Charles was a lonely little British boy who was locked up safely in his mansion. They had very different upbringings with very different experiences. Even in adulthood, Eric has been a soldier on a mission who's probably seen the real world as what it is, who's gone around the world and see the ugly side of humanity many times over. Charles is a scholar who grew up in a bubble. This all shapes the kind of men they are, and it shapes their relationship. The movie does a good job at devoting time to their friendship. It's crucial to both characters and story. Eric is a realist who believes that the best defense is a violent offense. Charles is more of an optimist who has hope and trust in people, including Eric. It's a common belief that Eric and Charles are fictional parallels to real-world activists Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. For a basic understanding of them, their ideology, practices, and friendship, it's easy to view it from that perspective. Charles' optimism does carry over to his care for his friends. He tries to get Eric out from the darkness, pull back his brutality, and try to unveil his humanity. They travel to Russia to catch Emma Frost. The movie does a good job at showing Eric's growth. He has the opportunity to kill the right-hand woman of Shawn, but he understands that there are bigger things at stake. He's putting aside his vengeance for the bigger cause. It was important for Eric to make this decision on his own, so I'm glad that, again, Charles didn't force him to do anything. He's allowing his friend to grow on his own, and he trusts that he will. Eric's secondary arc is his evolution from a lone wolf to the leader of the pack. He's got serious alpha dog energy. Woof woof. Ugh. The team of the young X-Men are attacked, with one member being killed and the other leaving to join the forces of Shaw. Charles believes that they need to retreat. He doesn't want to risk the lives of his young comrades. Eric believes that they need to be trained to defend themselves. It's a dangerous world, and it will be good to have them know how to control their powers. Charles goes along with this, as he sees the value of teaching them control and understanding. Charles is kind of a liberal arts mom, while Eric is the kind of dad who would bare-knuckle box his kid to teach him self-defense. There's a good middle ground in there somewhere. They train at Charles' mansion. Again, they kind of address the fact that they grew up very differently. Eric kind of becomes a student himself, needing to still be trained. Charles and Eric have a very touching scene together. Emotionally, not physically. Eric believes his abilities are triggered by his anger. Charles believes that his power and strength comes from a place between rage and serenity. Charles gives Eric back a piece of his humanity by unearthing his memory of his mother. It was her love that made him so angry that she's gone. He's reminded about the true reason he's on this journey. He can't allow himself to forget his mother, because if he does, all he'll have left is just his anger. Eric does step more into a leadership role with the other mutants. I just don't feel like any of those relationships are very strong. I also don't think the rest of the cast are very strong either. In terms of character, I think everyone did a good performance. Just no one's relationship is as strong as Charles and Eric's. Eric and Mystique do kind of form a friendship. He's an advocate for his fellow mutants to live a life freely in the form that is natural and comfortable to them. After rewatching this movie, I kinda hate Beast. He just seems very forceful and a jerk. I think Eric should have had more of moments with him as well, because he seemed like the most lost. Eric and Mystique being kind of closer was a setup between the partnership of Eric and Mystique, because this is still a prequel movie. I just think that they kind of tripped at the finish line with their relationship. Mystique appears in his bed to offer herself to him. He makes her feel beautiful in her natural form, so I can understand the infatuation. But he's doing this out of kindness of his heart and out of the wanting of his friends to be comfortable with who they are. It's like falling in love with a senior in high school. He just kind of gets you, you know? Eric should have reaffirmed that she is beautiful in the form she feels most comfortable with, and then send her back to her room. Instead, they kiss. I'm not a fan of this. I also hate how Beast chokes him out after saying a genuine compliment while he just lets Havoc off. I guess his insult kink only applies to Havoc. Shawn and Eric meet again. This time, Eric isn't alone. Shaw does attempt to continue his manipulation of Eric, using the tactic that every horrible thing that he did to him was in order to make him stronger. The theme of monster and creator was brought up in the bar scene, and it's played with again in this scene. Shaw's meant to be the precursor to Eric's role as Magneto. He's a mutant leader who has a twisted and almost villainous method of preserving mutant kind. Though Shaw seems more power hungry than Eric is, as Eric is influenced by his time in the Holocaust, while Shaw never experienced that, as he was an actual Nazi. Shaw gives himself the credit of the kind of man that Eric has become. Eric accepts that Shaw has had influence on him, but he's also grown on his own. He combines the ideology and influences of Shaw, Charles, and mixes it with his own experiences. He's mastered his own powers and trauma. He's now evolved. A theme to this movie is finding direction. Eric has spent his whole life with one goal: kill his mother's murderer. Charles helps Eric find a new purpose. Eric sacrifices his relationship to accomplish his journey and begin his new path in the fight for mutant kind. After Eric finally does kill Shaw, he's now able to step into the role of the antagonist of Charles. Their beliefs are finally clashing. Eric is proven right. After Shaw is defeated, humanity turns against mutant kind. Charles is seeing the true face of the people he had hope in, but he still can't allow Eric to cross that line, and he still has that glimmer of hope, both in humanity and in Eric. Eric has so many great lines in this movie. "I've been at the mercy of men just following orders" is just perfect. It reminds Charles and the audience of his origin and how that influences his ideology and actions. Charles and Moira attempt to stop Eric from killing all the boats of soldiers. Eric's inability to recognize the faults in his own actions causes him to hurt his only friend. He now has that guilt on his conscience as well. He's failed to protect his own kind, hinting that friends will harm friends in the upcoming war. Another real-life thing of neighbor turning on neighbor. Eric assumes his traditional role as Magneto. He and Charles have evolved into leaders in this struggle for mutant rights. They've helped create each other's greatest adversary. They are each other's creators. The character of Magneto in general is a very intriguing character. He can have the arc of a villain or a hero. Either way, it can be a very compelling journey. The world of X-Men is one of representation. If you're a person who faced adversity, you can relate to these characters, including Magneto. After First Class, the movies kind of don't know what to do with the character. They kind of keep making him just a villain, then a guy who loses everything again and again and again. He just kind of becomes lost. This movie does a perfect job at focusing and capturing the who and why of this character. he was before. Why is he going on this journey? I hope that future adaptations retain the key themes of the character. He's one of the most important facets of the X-Men mythos. Magneto represents something that is very real in the world. He is the extremist. He's the one man's terrorist, another man's freedom fighter. I hope future adaptations retain that kind of aspect of the character. It's what makes him exceptional.